Good evening, everybody. Or as we say informally, hi. I'm John Nicholson, the director of the Newhouse Sports Media Center, and this, of course, is our honored guest, Dick Stockton, Hall of Fame sportscaster, generally recognized as one of the top 50 sportscasters ever. I think, actually, it's a smaller group that he's among, but he's pretty humble about that kind of stuff. When we started the Sports Media Center about 2.5 years ago, we recognized a pantheon of people in sports media who went to SU. And we tried to get every one of them to come here to speak at forums such as this. One of the people I've been hoping to get from the beginning is Dick Stockton. And here he is. So the way it will work is I'm going to ask him some questions for 10, 15 minutes or so to give you some ideas of things you might want to ask about. And then we'll open it up to questions for quite a good period of time. And when we're finished, as always, our tradition here, you'll be able to come down, shake Dick's hand, take selfies with him, press your business cards upon him, ask him, please, can you have a job and stuff like that, and we'll see what he has to say. But let's start at the beginning. As I recall, the beginning was in Philadelphia, but pretty soon you were in Queens. And what was your name when you were born? What did your parents name you?
You know, I forgot. It was, I was known as Ricky. They called me Ricky. Stockvis. It was a Dutch name. Stokvis. Stockvis. It's a very popular name in Holland. It means fisherman. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
How did Stockton come about and when in your life?
Came about when I was got my first real job on the air in Philadelphia, and I was see what happened was that they were auditioning new people, and the weatherman had to go to Cleveland. There was a trade between Cleveland and Philadelphia and Group W stations. So they say, is there anyone down in the radio newsman, the room, who could come up and just be a mannequin, just act like a weather guy? So someone said, Stockvis, you go up and do this. So I go up there and I said, there's a low pressure coming in from the Pacific and then a high pressure, and it's this. A year later, they're looking for a weekend sportscaster at the TV station because I was doing all night radio news. Great job, 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. I loved it in Philadelphia, first job, 22 years old. And so the guy says, who was that guy that did the weather a year ago? I want him to audition for the weekend sportscaster. So I did, and I got the job. And I got the job by ad-libbing for 10 minutes of about the mid-season baseballs. I was not going to beat guys that have been in the business. I ad-libbed. I looked at the camera and I say, National League, I went over every team, and so they hired me. And then he says, he used to smoke a pipe. His name was Win Baker. He invented a concept called eyewitness news, which you might have remembered, eyewitness news in cities around America. So anyway, he brings me up and he says, smokes his pipe. He was went to Tulane. He was a genius broadcaster, tough. He was like a Lombardi kind of guy. And he said, Stockvis. What's Stockvis? What is? People know what, when you say it, they don't know what it is. And when they see it, they don't. Come up with something else. Okay, Stockton. How's Stockton? Good. That was it. And so so on the radio station, they put out a little bulletin that was on the bulletin board. From now on, Dick Stockvis is now Dick Stockton. But invariably, you know, they would forget. So they say, now for the next half hour of our, you know, radio, all news radio, 1060 on your radio dial, KYW, Philadelphia, here is Dick Stockvis. Stockton. So that's how it started, and then that's what happened.
As a kid in Queens, tell us where in Queens, and tell us how you became a fan of sports.
Well, I grew up in Kew Garden Hills, not far from where Paul Simon was. We were later waiters at a camp together in Long Island, Bellport, Long Island. Both of us were fired as waiters from that. And after the dinners, he used to come in and strum the guitar, Paul Simon. And you know, he wanted to be like the old Everly Brothers at the time. And I saw him years later. I'm going to get to the answer. Years later, I saw him and I said, "Whatever happened to you after Kent?" You know. So my father was in the printing business, and he was a great sports fan and had season tickets to the New York baseball Giants at the Polo Grounds where they played before they moved to San Francisco. Polo Grounds? What's that? That was the park that they had in Manhattan. It was Yankee Stadium, Polo Grounds, Ebbets Field in Brooklyn where the Dodgers played before they moved to LA and San Francisco. He would take me to these games and it would explain everything to me that was going on. He got me these baseball cards, Bowman cards, I'll give you the year. You guys were young at the time, 1951. He got me a card and I saw Al Red Schoendienst, second base, St. Louis Cardinals. Bat switch hitter, throws right, born Germantown, Illinois. I said, wow, I love these cards. He took me to the Polo Grounds, and they were playing the St. Louis Cardinals. And we were in the dark, dungy, inner sanctum of the Polo Grounds. The park was out there. We walked out, and there was Red Schoendienst, real life Red Schoendienst. And when I saw the green of the Polo Grounds, and I heard the music, and heard batting practice, and the batting, I said, this is what I want to do in my life. That's what happened.
Right then and there.
I was 8 years old, and I knew what I wanted to do.
You were in the Polo Grounds in 1954 for the World Series with the Indians. Tell us what happened then.
Well, that was the game. Can you all hear me, by the way? That was the game in which Willie Mays made one of the greatest catches of all time. Over the shoulder in center field, robbing Vic Wertz of extra bases. He caught this ball. My father said, stand on this chair and watch this drive. And he made the catch. It was one of the greatest catches of all time. But before the game, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, these photographers are kneeling in front of me, taking pictures of me. And my father's to my right, and I'm here. And I'm saying, Dad, what are they doing? Why are they taking pictures of me? He turns around, he looks, and he says, take a look around. You know who this person is? And I looked around, and I said, no, I have no idea. He says, General Douglas MacArthur. They thought I was MacArthur's son. That was my highlight.
How did you decide to come to Syracuse?
It was very meticulous the way I decided how I was coming here. I mean, I studied books, and I studied, actually, who was going to win between Penn State and Syracuse in 1959. They were both undefeated. They were both 7-0 or 8-0. I don't know what they were. And I told my dad I wanted to study journalism. There was no Newhouse School, and I never thought about being on the air, ever. I wanted to be a sports writer. And I said, Dad, Penn State has a good journalism school. Syracuse, I have both applications. Whoever wins this game, that's where I'm going to go. And Syracuse won 20-18. They blocked a kick. They win the game 20-18 at State College, and I fill out the application, and that's when I decided Syracuse.
So without a block kick, you're not here tonight.
That's right. I'd be at State.
Or worse yet, you're here as a Penn State alum.
That's right. And that would be worse.
Did you ever become a sports writer? Did you work for the Daily Orange or anything like that? What happened when you got here?
Yes, I did. I went in, I was very shy. I was shy in high school, and I didn't have any dates, by the way, until I really didn't have any dates. It'd be Saturday night, and I'd be listening to the radio to hear out-of-town hockey games. And I would be trying to get the station, and you get the crackling, and I hear a hockey game or a basketball game, and my mother would walk by and she'd say, Joe, what's wrong with our son? So I wrote for the Daily Orange, and from there I worked on weekends at the Syracuse Herald-Journal, and I was a copy boy there, but I also covered Syracuse freshman football and basketball, and that was when I was writing, and and I also had worked at WAER, but I wanted to be a sports writer.
But you did find that little tin shack over where the Flanagan is now, as a freshman.
I did, and it was very interesting because a friend of mine who had gone to the Columbia School of Journalism, broadcasting, wanted to be an announcer in the worst way, never became one. We're playing intramural basketball in that old gym, which, John took me around campus today. Great memories. I've seen it a few times, but not for a while. And Across was the old World War II Quonset huts, which was WAR, and he says to me, why don't you audition for WAR? Why don't you audition for the campus radio? I said, I don't want to do that. Come on, just go in and do it. So I auditioned, it was a Friday, and then on Monday, I see my name down there to do a music show, a newscast, a sportscast, whatever it was. And I got into it, and I kind of liked it.
Were you in fact the sports director as a freshman?
I was the first freshman ever named sports director of a senior staff position. And I liked it because I could do about a few basketball games at the Onondaga War Memorial before Manley Fieldhouse was built. And they had capacity, what do you have now, 30,000 fans? They had about 1,500 people watching a team that had lost 21 straight games. And I had to lower my voice because the players were hearing it on the court. So that was what I had at the time.
But then later on in your college career, you wanted to be sports director again.
Yes.
And that didn't work out.
No, it was actually the next year. And they say, what do you want to be? You know, you were a senior staff position, you were a sports director. And I said, well, I'd like to be the sports director again. And then I didn't get it. They gave it to somebody else. And I said, I was really down about that, you know. And I went to some faculty. I said, let me ask you, seriously tell me, why couldn't I be the sports director again? When you said that, we felt you had no ambition. We thought you'd be the sales manager, news director, program manager, general manager. You had no ambition. That's why I'm very suspect of faculty.
I am too. Do you recall who did get the job as sports director?
Barry, I forget his last name. Do you know who it is?
I don't, but I'm pretty sure he's not a
Barry
famous
Schwartz.
sportscaster today.
I think it was Barry. I think it was he. You know what? And he was good at getting the lines, getting the phone lines into the games.
That was key.
And by the way, he became a very successful radio station owner over the years. In fact, the other guy who wanted the job was Marv Albert, who was a year ahead of me, who was already working downtown doing disc jockey shows. So Marv and I weren't good enough to be the sports director at Syracuse University.
But you were being paid professionally to do all kinds of broadcasting around central New York. Were you and Marv good friends when you were undergrads?
Yes, we were. You know, when I came here, you know, he was so far ahead of anybody in this business for his age, because he was doing at a radio station, WOLF, I don't know if it still exists today, but it was a disc jockey show, and he was with dedications, and so he was doing that. And then when Marty Glickman would go on long trips, he'd have Marv do Knicks and Ranger games. And here I was, you know, I was happy at WAER, but I'm saying, gee, someday I'd like to be something like Marv Albert, you know, and we've always, you know, stayed close. NBA has been he's always loved the NBA, and I did the NBA for 9 years before he took over when NBC took the contract away from CBS.
We always talk about Marty as the godfather of everything sports media here at SU. Have you ever had a relationship, did you, with Marty? As
Yes, I did.
Or later on? Tell us about that.
Actually, I was working in Boston at WBZ doing the TV shows there, the nightly sports. And I get a call, Dick, Marty Glickman here. They're starting a new cable thing called Home Box Office. I'd like you to do some play-by-play for Home Box Office. There are no commercials. No commercials. You'll be doing double headers of college basketball in Madison Square Garden. Not only do we not go to commercial, there's no halftime break and no break between games. You interview anyone you want. You can talk to the cheerleaders, you can talk to the coaches, assistant coaches. The greatest training I ever had, TV, was working at Home Box Office when they had 8,000 subscribers in Wilkes-Barre and Scranton. What's happened to Home Box Office since? I don't know.
I've heard it's done all right.
It's done all right. It's done.
Did you ask him, what if I need to use the men's room?
I never asked him that question. And you know what? I don't think I ever had to go.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it was a good thing.
So these days, when somebody comes out of SU who wants to be a broadcaster, particularly play-by-play, but also a sports television host, sports anchor, etc., you generally can go into Kalispell, or you're going to West Texas somewhere. You went into some pretty big places right away. Tell us about that.
I did. I got this connection with Group W because I was, as I mentioned at dinner, I got a job as the farm reporter on WIBX in Utica, New York, between my sophomore and junior years, and I was so excited, to have that, to actually do commercial radio. And then Group W, Westinghouse Broadcasting, which owned a lot of stations, many of you may remember WBZ in Boston, KPI San Francisco, whatever. They wanted to get some interns who would be in the management training program. They were going to select 8 interns to work a 10-week summer thing. And they came to Syracuse competing against guys from 10 other schools. And I was fortunate enough to be selected. And I went to KDKA in Pittsburgh, and I worked in the radio department for 10 weeks in every department, the music department, public affairs, sales, news, everything, and that's what I did. But they liked what I did there, and they never forgot me. And so when I got out of school, I was at Fort Dix for 6 months in the Army Reserve. They hired me to be a copy boy at WINS in New York. First, I was a producer of a show called Stan Bernard Contact. It was an interview show, and one time I was the guy that would get coffee and also say, "Will you please turn down your radio? You please, you're going to go on with Stan in a minute." But on one particular weekend, it was a Friday, and they said, "Dick, will you go downstairs and get this guest?" Malcolm X was going to be on the show, and he had all of his friends with him, his cohorts, and they came up, and I talked to them, and I just kept them busy before they went into the show. And Malcolm X had a debate with somebody on the radio, and at the end of the debate, he said, come to Harlem on Sunday, I'm going to go speak, and you'll hear what I have to say." And that's when he got assassinated.
What was he like to you as a guy who was just taking him around and helping him in his entourage?
Reasonable guy. Wasn't that long. It was
Didn't he chat with you much?
A half hour. Well, I mean, we just talked about things, but I didn't get into issues because I didn't want him to get to talk a lot because he was going to go on the radio. Mm-hmm. But he was pleasant, and all of the people around him were pleasant. But
and when he was killed, what was your thought? What was your reaction to that?
I mean, this was the first exposure I ever had with, somebody who was, in the public eye, who was a national figure with tragedy involved, and it was stunning. I mean, I never forgot the entire experience of having somebody come in and just welcoming them to the show.
So you move forward. Eventually, you spend a good deal of time in Boston, and you can tell us about the different experiences there. I do want to hear the story about Red Auerbach, but first, what about Gene Kirby?
Well, before Gene Kirby, and this is what I would like to talk to you guys about, because when you have a career like I've had, and you talk about all the successes, like John kind enough to say top 50. I don't know about that, but I've had I called Carlton Fisk's home run in the '75 World Series. I did the Olympics when Dan Jansen won the speed skating gold medal. I called all of the Celtics-Lakers playoffs in the 1980s. I've had great things. They say, "Man, it's been great. What a great time," and yet it has been great. Any pitfalls? Yes. And I want to talk to you guys and gals about things that will happen when you get out of the field that won't go according to form. Because somebody likes somebody better, they will take them over you, and you'll say, "Wait a second, I have more ability, I think," and you'll have to go with what the management says. How do you handle yourself in these circumstances? And I've always handled myself in a good way, but when I was younger, there was a time that I decided to fight back. And this was a time when I was working in Boston, and I was, one of the reasons why I had some success as a local sportscaster on the newscast was that I did commentaries, which we have plenty of today, but at the time it didn't exist. And the same guy, Win Baker, who hired me, said, "I want you to do a commentary where you're going to be critical. You can praise, critical, but I want you to have thoughts and opinion, and they can be tough. And I'm not even going to go into the names of some of the people that I criticized, you know, because I may be embarrassed to mention who they are today, so I won't do that. But anyway, what happened is that you then feel that you wake up in the morning and you say, who am I going to get on today? You know, is it going to be Roberto Clemente? Is it going to be Billy Sullivan, the owner? And so you become a negative person because you're thinking of negatives. And so there was a time that came that I said to myself, you know, I love sports. When my dad took me to the Polo Grounds, I loved sport. I loved watching games. I loved it. And now, you know, I'm negative. Not all the time, but I didn't want to be negative at all. So I went to the same guy, Win Baker, and I said, Win, you have rights to 30 or 40 Boston Red Sox games, on weekends mostly. I'd like to go in on a weekend and do an inning. Let me do an inning or two, just so I can satisfy my desire to get into play-by-play, which I've never done. And he said, Dick, you don't have the ability to do play-by-play. That didn't strike me right. You know, he could have given a lot of reasons, but he said the wrong thing. So I got a lawyer and I sued the company to get out of my contract. And we reached a settlement where I had 1 year to go, and when I left the company and I moved to New York City with no job to freelance to try to get play-by-play jobs, okay? I had nothing. Then Marty Glickman came along, I had some HBO, but scattered stuff. And then about a few months later, I get a call from him in Boston. He says, I'd like you to come back and be the voice of the Boston Celtics. We do 20 games a year. I said, Win, I don't have the ability to do play-by-play. I had to say that, Dick. I didn't want you to lose the desire to do the commentaries on the news. I came back. Bob Cousy and I were the broadcasters of the Boston Celtics. We did 20 games for 2 years. Then at the end of that second year, I get a call from, well, actually it was the beginning. It was like March, April, which is still a basketball season. And Gene Kirby was the assistant general manager of the Boston Red Sox. And he says, WBZ, the station that you worked for, is losing the rights to the Red Sox. They're going to a UHF station, WSBK in Boston. We're going to do 100 games. Your name has been mentioned as a possible play-by-play guy. Have you ever done baseball before? I said, no. He says, well, take a tape recorder and go to Yankee Stadium and do it. Actually, it was the Shea Stadium. Yankee Stadium was being refurbished, and do a game and send me the tape. This is in April, and we'll critique it. So I sent him the tape, and he's called me in a week. Called him in a week. He says, Dick, you got a legal pad handy? I said, yeah. Let's go. He says, you are horrendous. Here's what you did wrong. He went pitch by pitch for 9 innings. I mean, I'm not saying it was all bad, but I had 7 pages of legal paper written out with things I did wrong. He said, get a tape recorder, go back and do another game. Did the same thing, same result. 7 times I went back to do a tape. Finally in September, he said, I can now recommend you to be the Red Sox announcer. And Ken Harrelson and I became the Red Sox announcer. And who knew about fate? 1 year later, I broadcast the World Series and call one of the great plays ever.
When Gene gave you the critique and the ensuing critiques, did you bristle at all? Were you totally receptive? What was your response?
Bristle? I was thinking, maybe I can't do this. This guy worked with the top broadcasters in the business before that, in the Game of the Week. No, I didn't bristle, but I was determined to go back and succeed because this is what I wanted to do. And the answer is, you don't quit. You don't let other people tell you you can't do it. Now, he did it in a constructive way, because he could have said after one time, he can't do it, forget about him. But he came back, he wanted me to succeed, I wanted to do it for him too, and it worked. But, you know, the thing you can't worry about when you go out in the field, and I know it's a different time now than it was when I was in your chair, and that is, it's not about how much money you're gonna make. Forget that, you know? You're gonna do it because you want to do it, because you have a love for doing it and you have the passion. You're going to be persistent and you're going to follow orders, and you're not going to fight management because they win all the time. Not some of the time, all the time. If you don't like it, leave and go find something else. But if your pride is so big and you're not humble enough, you have no chance of succeeding. Sacrifice. Someone says, I've gone to people, I remember in Boston, I talked to the broadcasting students, and they said, I said, would you work from 10:30 at night to 6:30 in the morning, 6 nights a week for $200 a week? That's what it was at that time. It would be more now. No way. What kind of life would I have? I said, thank you. You have no chance. You have to sacrifice. You never know when the break is going to come. I know today that youngsters and people your age are, I should say, express themselves to higher ups more readily than we did, okay? If you want to succeed, bury the pride, bury the ego, do the job, know that it's going to take some time maybe. Don't worry about the money. That only comes with ultimate success. If you don't do these things, you're not going to make it. But everyone in this room can make it and do what you want to do. You have the passion to do it, be determined to do it, and just don't make waves, and follow the orders and work hard. And usually the ones that are the quietest make it.
You've worked with a lot of partners over the years, and I do want to come back to the Fisk home run. But first, you mentioned Hawk Harrelson.
Does that make an impression? Does it seriously, what I said?
See, here's the thing.
I don't know.
We tell them that, but when you tell them that,
no, really.
now you're listening?
How many here are saying, what are you talking about? Raise your hands if you think, honestly, I'm not going to take names. What's his name? No, I'm not going to take any names. I'm not going to do any of that. How many people here? I want to know this, because this is why I'm here. I'm not here for anything other than helping you guys. Do you believe what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do you believe it?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you raising your right hand to swear there?
No,
James, or-
no. I'm serious.
Okay.
I'm serious.
No, that's not yet. Stand by one. Let me take you back to, I can't leave Hawk hanging out there, although the Hawk does hang in Chicago. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, but at first, you and Hawk Harrelson didn't mesh quite so well. After a while, you worked it out. How did that go?
Well, Hawk, Hawk wanted to get on the pro golf tour, so, Hawk on the road would be putting in front of mirrors, and he played golf all the time. And, I was from New York, and he was from Savannah, Georgia, and we were poles apart, but he respected the fact that I could do something that he didn't do at the time, play-by-play, which he does now. And he was a character. That's why they hired him, because he was a character. He had the Hawk Walkie Award, Nehru suits. This is years ago. Look it up sometime. You'll see how ridiculous they were. And Hawk Harrelson was a character. But we had fun together. Our first broadcast that we ever did was an exhibition game, Grapefruit League game at Chain of Lakes Park in Winnebago. We had never done a game together. And so we're talking about a guy, and I said, Tim Foley, the Montreal Expos, and he says, you know what I like about Tim Foley? He has a good pair of, and he said it. And I said, what did he say? And then after the game, they said, you can't do this. And we got ripped in Boston, the Boston Globe. These guys are clowns. Hawk thought we never were going to make opening day, but we made opening day, and we had a good season, and so we worked together for 4 years.
I want to come back to some of the other partners you worked with, but first, the Fisk home run. We talked about this at dinner tonight, the lessons that can be taken from how that was called. Is it fresh in your mind, and what can you tell us about how you feel you did that well, and what we all can learn from how that
Well,
was
I don't know. At the time, you know, people always say, do you know how important it is? You never know how important an event is. Only time will tell after the fact. All it was that night was a home run in the 12th inning, and the Red Sox sent the World Series to a 7th game. And it was a dramatic home run. That was it. They were singing and dancing in Boston at nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. But, so I was doing the World Series, and I was the Red Sox announcer. There was the Reds announcer, Marty Brenneman, working with Kurt Gowdy, Tony Kubek, and Joe Garagiola from NBC. And I did game 1 on TV with Kurt, and I did game 4 on radio with Kurt, and now it was game 6. And what happened is that this was a game in which the Reds could clinch the World Series, and they wanted to have the NBC voice call the last out, which of course they would. They didn't want to have a team guy. So they said, Dick, you'll do the first 4.5 innings, and Kurt will do the, but it wasn't Kurt, it was Joe Garagiola. Kurt was on radio. We'll do the last 4.5, and Joe Garagiola is our top guy. So anyway, that's the way it worked. The game is 6-6, they go to extra innings. What are we going to do now? Chet Simmons, the head of NBC Sports, they said, let's just alternate innings. So I did the 10th, Joe did the 11th, I did the 12th. Being at the right place at the right time, someone's looking over you. I was doing the game when Fisk hit the second pitch in the bottom of the 12th inning to win the game, and it was named by TV Guide the most exciting baseball moment in history. So I'm calling this game, and Fisk, the count is 1-0 to Fisk, and he hits a shot. Now, when you're doing play-by-play and you're doing baseball, and there's a ball hit deep to center, like last night, if you watch the World Series, and Gordon ties it up, sends the game into extra inning, and there's a drive deep to center field, way back, it's gone, and it's time. That's one way. Then you have the ball that is a shot down the line in a nanosecond. What do you do then? Similar to what Joe Buck had when Mark McGwire hit his 70th home run in St. Louis, right down the line. He hits a shot down the line, so it's instinct. You can't plan it. If it stays fair, first thing, if it stays fair, pause, home run. And then the place went nuts. And then I shut up. For 36 seconds, I did not say a word as he went around the bases, fans coming out, grabbing at him. John Kiley, the organist at Fenway Park, hallelujah chorus, you hear in the music, nothing. Place is going wild. Red Sox are at home plate. They mob Fisk. I said nothing, because what's better than pictures and sounds? Now, it's not that way today, folks, as you all know. It's wall-to-wall talk. It's people screaming, and you're not listening to them. What are they saying? What's better on TV than the pictures and the sounds of an event? The director cutting pictures, the despondent Reds, the elated Red Sox, Fisk waving his arms, come home, mobbed at home plate. And all I said after that as he went into the dugout is that we will have a 7th game to this 1975 World Series, and that was it. And it was pure instinct. I know that Vince Scully, the great Dodger announcer, has done it. It's a matter of technique. I didn't know that, but he has done it. I didn't invent it, but that was what made that moment important. The 36 seconds after I said, if it stays fair.
You're still proud of that?
Well, it's, you know, I was 32 years old at the time, John, and I said, you know, this is a great moment. And I don't know what my career is going to be, but I'm sure I'm going to have some great. Nothing has surpassed that moment. It's number one, and always number one. And the two funny things about that is every time I've seen Fisk, I said, Pudge, without my call, what would have happened? And he looks at me. And then, of course, Johnny Bench, when I run into Johnny Bench, which I do all the time, he says to me, Dick, just remember who won that World Series. I said, Johnny, I think they called it off after 6 games, 3-3. I don't think they played a 7th game.
But your career then continued at a very high level, as it does to this moment. CBS, Fox, football, baseball, Winter Olympics, and practically anything one can think of. Over the years, you've worked with a lot of terrific people. In recent years, you've said to me, it's kind of been your job to break in people as analysts. What's that about? How has that worked?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have that role. I mean, the way the business works, you know, I was mentioning to John and the guys at dinner that, you know, there was a producer who used to produce all of John Madden and Pat Summerall's football games for 21 years. You know, he was in his mid to late 60s, I think, and they moved him to a different team and they put another guy in, not to Madden and Summerall, yes, but I think it was Madden and Summerall, they have the younger guy. And he said to me, I'm really distraught because I'm better than this guy, I'm better than these people. And I said, Bob, how old were you when you took over the #1 CBS producing job? He says, 31. I said, the guy whose place you took, did he not think he was better than you at the time and could still do the job? It's the nature of life, and you have to understand it. And the fact that you're still working is a great thing. So I have understood, I'm very happy with myself to know that the fact that I'm still doing things is great, because after a while, there's a new wave who deserve to be doing games, who are coming on. So my role, Fox says, is to develop and nurture and mentor our football broadcasters. So our top 5 analysts at Fox are Troy Aikman, Darrell Johnston, John Lynch, Charles Davis, and Rondé Barber. I broke in all 5 of those guys, and I'm proud of that. And they always send me notes, you know, and look, I'm not responsible for their success, they are. They had to have the talent to do it. I just played a role in it. Right now I'm working with David Deal, the former New York Giants left tackle. We're doing the Rams 49ers game this week. And, you know, last year he had a full schedule, things didn't go that well, and they said, oh, can we save this guy? Dick, you got him. And they like what he's done so far. So that is my role right now, and I love it. I do the Chris Webber. Chris Webber never had done a game before I worked with him at Turner, and now he's the #1 analyst. Steve Kerr, same thing when we did the San Antonio Spurs. I get great pleasure out of that because it's not about me anymore. I've done everything I could do, and my idea now when I do a broadcast with anybody is, how do I make him look good? I want people to say, and I tell them this, you know what? Those guys sounded pretty, I enjoyed listening to those guys. But man, that analyst was really good, he made good points. If they say that, then I've succeeded. And
then you're compelling.
Yeah.
So that Cuppy will appreciate that. My last question, then we'll turn it over to you all. Our quote of the day on our Newhouse Sports Media Center website today is from you, and it says, I'm paraphrasing, I get more nervous teeing off in front of a few strangers than broadcasting to millions of people.
That's true. I mean, I don't get nervous, you know, broadcasting a game. Although I will say, of all the sports that you do, NFL, because you have a week between games, is compelling. You have a little butterflies before you go do a broadcast because so much is expected after a week off, you know, and they've talked about the game for a week and now there's another game. But although I will say this, for you golf fans, and there's a guy named Philip Sparks, and he's a British pro, and his whole thing is based on relaxation, no tension, just swinging and being calm. And you know what? I read his whole book, 250 pages on the flight here today. I used it the other day to success. I don't think I'll be as nervous anymore with 4 guys watching me.
What would you like to know? I think we have a microphone to pass around. So show us hands. Is anybody handling this microphone, by the way? All right, so if not, talk up really loud. Oh, here comes the microphone from the back now. All right, James, you had your hand up before, so let's bring the mic down to you and then we'll take your question. This microphone is coming to you via Pony Express and should be down here in front.
So
There you go, right down here. God bless you. It's all good.